The emergency signal came through at midnight. Ambassador Ji-won was sleeping in her quarters when the alarm went off. She jumped out of bed and ran to her communication terminal. The screen showed a message marked urgent in red letters. It was from the Talveen Confederation. Ji-won pressed the button to play the message. A face appeared on the screen. It was Chancellor Veltara, the leader of the Talveen people. The Talveen looked like tall, gentle creatures with soft fur and large eyes. But right now, Veltara's eyes were filled with tears. "Please," Veltara said, her voice shaking. "Please help us. The Kruthak swarm has attacked our worlds. 3 of our colonies are already gone. Millions of our people are dead. The swarm is moving toward our home world. We have maybe 2 weeks before they arrive." Ji-won felt cold. She knew about the Kruthak swarm. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were like a plague of insects that moved from world to world, eating everything in their path. They consumed entire civilizations and left nothing behind but dead planets. "I will take your message to the Galactic Coalition Council immediately," Ji-won promised. "We will help you." The next morning, Ji-won stood before the Coalition Council. The council chamber was a massive circular room. Representatives from dozens of different alien species sat in rows looking down at her. At the top sat High Arbiter Quentis, a tall, insect-like creature with multiple arms and hard, shiny skin. The Vryn species loved rules and procedures more than anything else. "Ambassador Ji-won," Quentis said in a clicking voice, "please present your emergency petition." Ji-won played Veltara's message for the entire council. When it finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then everyone started talking at once. "This is terrible," said one representative. "But what can we do?" "We must help them," Ji-won said firmly. "The Talveen are our allies. They are members of this council. We have a duty to protect them." High Arbiter Quentis raised one of his many hands. "Ambassador Ji-won is correct. However, we must follow proper procedures. I propose we form a committee to study this matter." "A committee?" Ji-won could not believe what she was hearing. "The Talveen don't have time for a committee. They need help now. All military actions require 6 months of review," Quentis replied. "It is in the regulations." A representative from the Luminar species spoke up. The Luminar were beautiful crystalline beings that glowed with soft light. "Our ships are not designed for combat. We are a peaceful people." Another voice joined in. "The cost would be enormous. Who would pay for such a military operation?" Ji-won looked around the room. Every species had an excuse. Every single one had a reason why they could not help. She felt anger building inside her. For 3 days the council debated. Ji-won argued and pleaded. But the other representatives just talked in circles. They formed committees. They requested more data. They discussed regulations. Meanwhile, the Kruthak swarm continued its advance. Another Talveen colony world fell. Then another. Millions more died. On the 3rd day, Chancellor Veltara came to the council chamber in person. She stood before them, and Ji-won could see that she had been crying. Veltara's hands were shaking. "Please," Veltara begged. "I am not asking for much. Just send some ships. Send anything. My people are dying. Our children are dying." She played a video on the main screen. It showed Talveen civilians running through the streets of a city. Above them, dark shapes moved in the sky. The Kruthak bioships looked like giant flying monsters. They descended on the city like a swarm of locusts. The video showed people being caught by the Kruthak organisms. It showed entire buildings being dissolved by acid. It showed a mother holding her child as the monsters approached. Then the video cut off. The council chamber was completely silent. Many representatives looked away. Some looked sad. But no one spoke. Finally, High Arbiter Quentis said, "Chancellor Veltara, we understand your pain. We truly do. But the council needs more time to reach a decision. Perhaps in a few weeks my people will be dead," Veltara said quietly. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber. Her shoulders were bent like she was carrying a heavy weight. Ji-won watched her leave. Then she looked at the other council members. They were already moving on to the next item on their agenda. They were talking about trade agreements and border disputes. They had already forgotten about the Talveen. Ji-won stood up and left the chamber. She found Veltara in the hallway outside, sitting on a bench with her face in her hands. "Chancellor," Ji-won said softly, "please wait here for a few hours. I need to make a call." Veltara looked up with tired eyes. "What good will another call do?" "No one will help us. The council won't help you," Ji-won agreed. But I'm not calling the council. I'm calling Earth. Jiwan went to her office and opened a direct communication line to Earth. It took a few minutes to connect across the light years. Then a face appeared on her screen. It was Admiral Minho, commander of Earth's defense fleet. Admiral Minho was a serious-looking man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Terran Defense Force. "Ambassador Jiwan," he said. "This must be important if you're using the emergency channel." "Admiral, I need the fleet," Jiwan said. "The Talveen Confederation is under attack by the Kruthak swarm. The Coalition refuses to help. Millions of innocent people are dying, and there's no one else who can save them." Admiral Minho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How many ships does the swarm have?" "Intelligence reports say at least 300 bioships in the Talveen sector. Maybe more on the way." 300, Minho repeated. "That's a lot. How many ships can we bring?" 67 warships are in range and ready for deployment," Jiwan said. "I know the numbers don't look good, Admiral. But the Talveen have no one else," Admiral Minho smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a warrior about to go into battle. "Ambassador, those other species in the Council have never met an enemy they couldn't run away from. They don't understand what it means to fight. But we're from Earth, we're humans. And on Earth, when someone calls for help, we answer. So you'll do it?" Jiwan felt hope rising in her chest. "You'll send the fleet?" "I'll do better than that," Minho said. "I'll lead it personally. Give me 2 hours to get the fleet mobilized. We'll be on our way to Talveen space before the day is over." The transmission ended. Jiwan sat back in her chair feeling relieved. Then she realized something. She had just committed Earth to a war without asking permission from the Coalition Council. Her terminal beeped. It was a message from High Arbiter Quentis. He had found out about her call to Earth. Jiwan went back to the council chamber. Quentis was standing at his podium, all his arms waving in agitation. "Ambassador Jiwan, what have you done?" he demanded. "You cannot simply declare war on behalf of humanity. There are procedures. There are regulations." "I didn't declare war," Jiwan said calmly. "I answered a distress call." "Isn't that what the Galactic Coalition is supposed to do? Isn't that why we formed this council in the first place?" "But the risk," another representative protested. "Humans are going to fight 300 Kruthak ships with only 67 vessels. It's suicide. They'll all die." "Maybe," Jiwan agreed. "But at least they're trying. That's more than anyone else here can say." She looked around the room at all the alien faces. Some looked angry. Some looked worried. But many looked ashamed. "You want to know what makes humans different?" Jiwan continued. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. Our planet has predators that can tear us apart. It has diseases that can wipe out entire cities. It has storms and earthquakes and volcanoes. For millions of years, Earth tried to destroy humanity, and we survived. We learned to fight back. We learned to never give up. We learned to protect each other, because that's the only way to survive on a death world. And now that we're out here among the stars, we're not going to stop. When someone needs help, we will come. When someone is in danger, we will fight. That's what humans do." High Arbiter Quentis opened his mouth to respond, but then his terminal beeped. He looked at the screen and his eyes widened. "What is it?" someone asked. "The human fleet," Quentis said slowly. "It's already moving. All 67 ships. They're heading toward Talveen space at maximum speed." Jiwan found Chancellor Veltara still sitting on the bench in the hallway. The Talveen leader looked up when Jiwan approached. "Help is on the way," Jiwan said. "The human fleet is coming." Veltara stared at her. "But there are so many Kruthak ships. How can 67 human vessels possibly—" "You've never seen humans fight," Jiwan said with a small smile. "You're about to learn what it means to have the Deathworlders on your side." The human fleet moved through space like a pack of metal wolves. Other alien species watched them pass through their territories and felt a strange mixture of feelings. The human warships did not look like the elegant vessels that most civilizations built. They were not smooth and beautiful. They were hard and brutal, covered in thick armor and bristling with weapons. The flagship was called the Indomitable. It was massive, 3 times larger than most Coalition warships. Captain Hyunwoo commanded it from the bridge. He was a young man with dark eyes that had seen too much combat. His crew respected him because he never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. On the bridge, Lieutenant Seojin worked at the weapons station. She was small and quiet, but her hands were steady. Before joining the military, she had been an Olympic sharpshooter. Now she controlled weapons that could destroy entire cities. Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer Do-yoon kept everything running. He was covered in grease and always had a tool in his hand. The other engineers said he could fix anything with enough time and spare parts. A Talveen liaison officer named Curie had been assigned to guide the human fleet through Talveen space. She boarded the Indomitable when it reached the border, and immediately everything felt wrong to her. The gravity was the first problem. As soon as she stepped onto the ship, Curie felt like someone had placed heavy weights on her shoulders. Her legs wanted to buckle. She had to focus just to stand upright. "Are you all right?" Captain Hyunwoo asked. He noticed her struggling but didn't seem concerned. "The gravity," Curie gasped. "It's so strong. How do you live in this?" "This is normal for us," Hyunwoo said. "Actually, it's a bit lighter than Earth's gravity. We keep it at 2.3 times what you're used to. If we made it comfortable for you, we would feel weak and slow." He gestured to a crew member. "Get her a gravity assist suit." Then he started walking down the corridor, expecting Curie to follow. She tried to keep up, but each step felt like climbing a mountain. The suit helped, but Curie was still shocked by what she saw as Hyunwoo showed her around the ship. In one room, human soldiers were exercising. They were lifting metal bars loaded with weights that Curie couldn't even push. They made it look easy. In another section, she saw the medical bay. A doctor named Yoonji was working there. Dr. Yoonji was studying samples of Kruthak tissue under a microscope. "We need to understand how they work," Yoonji explained. "If we know their biology, we can find their weaknesses. Have you found anything?" Hyunwoo asked. "Yes, actually. The swarm uses bioelectric pulses to communicate. If we could disrupt those signals with an electromagnetic pulse, we could confuse them. But the problem is that the pulse would need to be extremely powerful. It would disable most ships' electronics." Hyunwoo smiled. "Our ships are built to survive electromagnetic storms on gas giants. We have triple redundant shielding. A pulse strong enough to hurt the swarm would barely slow us down." Curie was beginning to understand. These humans didn't build their ships for comfort or efficiency. They built them to survive anything. Their whole civilization was designed around the idea that the universe was trying to kill them. Later, Curie was on the bridge when an alarm went off. A damaged reactor in the portside engine was overheating. Warning lights flashed red across multiple screens. "Shouldn't we stop and fix that?" Curie asked nervously. On a Talveen ship, any reactor problem meant immediate shutdown and repairs. "It still works," Do-yoon said over the communication channel from engineering. "I can keep it running for another week, maybe 2. We'll fix it properly after the battle." "After the battle?" Curie was shocked. "But what if it fails during combat?" "Then we switch to the backup reactor," Hyunwoo said casually. "We have 3 more. Don't worry. This ship was designed to keep fighting even when half of it is destroyed." Curie sat down in her chair, feeling dizzy. These humans were insane. They didn't just accept danger. They planned for it. They expected things to go wrong and built their entire military around that assumption. 5 days into the journey, they reached Halcyon, a Talveen border world. The planet was under siege. Hundreds of Kruthak bioships surrounded it like a dark cloud. They were blocking all relief efforts. 3 million Talveen civilians were trapped in underground shelters, running out of food and air. Admiral Minho called a meeting of all ship captains. Their faces appeared on screens around the flagship's bridge. "Listen up," Minho said. "The Kruthak have 300 ships at Halcyon. We have 67. The math doesn't look good. But here's what they don't know. They've never fought humans before. They don't understand what we're capable of." He pulled up tactical displays showing the swarm's formation. "They're used to enemies who run away. Every species they've fought retreats when things get difficult. They expect us to do the same. But we're not going to retreat. We're going to hit them hard and fast, and we're going to keep hitting them until they break. 3 million people are counting on us," Minho continued. "The entire galaxy is watching. They think we're going to fail. They think we're going to die. Let's prove them wrong. Let's show them what humans can do." The captains all nodded. No one looked afraid. They looked ready. "Sir," Captain Hyunwoo said, "request permission to lead the first wave." "Granted," Minho replied. "Take 12 ships and punch a hole through their formation. The rest of us will follow and widen the breach. We're going to split their fleet in half." The meeting ended. Curie looked at the tactical display with horror. The plan was simple but brutal. The humans were going to drive straight into the center of the swarm formation. It was the most dangerous approach possible. "Captain," she said carefully, "perhaps we should look for a safer approach. Maybe we could draw some of their ships away first, then their numbers." "That would take time," Yunwu said. "Time those people on Halcyon don't have. Sometimes the only way forward is straight through." Lieutenant Seojin ran final checks on the weapon systems. "All railguns ready?" "Plasma cannons charged. Missile tubes loaded." "Good," Hyunwoo said. He pressed a button on his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. We're going in." The Indomitable and 12 other ships broke away from the main fleet. They accelerated toward the swarm formation. Curie gripped the arms of her chair. Her heart was pounding. The Kruthak bioships detected them immediately. Dozens of the alien vessels turned to face the approaching humans. They were massive organic creatures grown rather than built. They looked like flying sea creatures with too many tentacles and eyes that glowed red. "Here they come," Seojin said calmly. The Kruthak ships opened fire. Green streams of acid shot across space. It was a weapon that had destroyed countless coalition vessels. The acid could dissolve metal in seconds. The acid hit the Indomitable's hull. Curie screamed. But when the acid cleared, the ship was still intact. The acid had burned away the outer layer of armor, but there were 3 more layers underneath. "Ablative armor working as designed," a crew member reported. "Minor damage to outer hull. No penetration." "Return fire," Hyunwoo ordered. Seojin pressed her controls. The Indomitable's railguns fired. Solid metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. They hit the Kruthak ships with devastating force. The organic armor that had protected the swarm from energy weapons couldn't stop solid projectiles traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. One Kruthak ship exploded. Then another. Then 3 more. "They're not adapting fast enough," Seojin observed. "They keep using the same tactics." "They've never needed to adapt before," Hyunwoo said. "They've always had the advantage in numbers. But numbers don't mean much when you're made of meat and we're covered in metal." The human ships smashed into the Kruthak formation like hammers. 2 Kruthak vessels tried to block the Indomitable's path. Hyunwoo didn't slow down, brace for impact. He called out. Kayuri grabbed her chair with both hands. The Indomitable hit the first Kruthak ship at full speed. The reinforced prow, designed to punch through asteroid fields and survive atmospheric entry on high-gravity worlds, tore through the bioship's organic hull like it was paper. The second Kruthak ship tried to dodge, but the Indomitable clipped it with a glancing blow that sent it spinning away, trailing debris and fluids. Alarms blared throughout the bridge. The ship had taken damage from the impact, but it was still moving, still fighting. "Damage report," Hyunwoo ordered calmly, as if they hadn't just rammed 2 enemy ships. "Forward armor compromised. Hull breach on deck 7, sealed automatically. Starboard railgun offline. Everything else operational," came the response. Curie stared at the crew. They were all working calmly, efficiently, like this was normal. And she realized that for them it was. This was what they trained for. This was what their entire civilization prepared them to do. Behind them, the rest of the human fleet followed through the gap they had created. Admiral Minho's voice came over the communication channel. "Good work, Indomitable. All ships engage at will. Let's show these bugs what happens when they mess with humanity's friends." The battle for Halcyon had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, the Kruthak swarm was facing an enemy that refused to break, refused to run, and refused to surrender. Curie watched through the view screen as human ships tore into the swarm formation. She had been afraid that the humans would die heroically but pointlessly. Now she was afraid of something else. The battle raged for 18 hours without stopping. Curie stayed on the bridge of the Indomitable the entire time. She couldn't look away. She had never seen anything like this. The human ships fought with a ferocity that seemed impossible. The Kruthak swarm tried everything. They sent waves of smaller organisms to board the human vessels. But these organisms died in the high oxygen atmosphere that humans breathed. The few that survived couldn't handle the heavy gravity and were easily killed by the crew. The swarm tried surrounding individual ships and overwhelming them. But human vessels were designed with overlapping fields of fire. Every ship could protect the others. When the Kruthak focused on one target, 3 others would blast them from the sides. 6 hours into the battle, the Indomitable took a direct hit from a Kruthak mothership. The biological cannon fired a concentrated blast of acid and organic matter. The shot penetrated through 3 layers of armor and tore a massive hole in the port side of the ship. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed everywhere. Curie could see space through the gaping wound in the ship's hull. She was certain they were finished. "Captain, we've lost power to the portside weapons," someone reported. "Hull breach on decks 5 through 9. Casualties reported throughout the damaged sections." "Can we still maneuver?" Hyunwoo asked. "Yes, sir. Main engines still functional." "Then we keep fighting. All power to forward weapons. Helm, plot a ramming course for that mothership." Curie couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Captain, we need to retreat. The ship is badly damaged. If we take another hit like that, we'll be destroyed." "Then we better make sure they don't get another shot," Hyunwoo said. He looked at his crew. Ramming speed. The Indomitable accelerated directly toward the massive Kruthak mothership. The enemy vessel was 5 times larger than the human flagship. It was turning to fire its biological cannon again. Lieutenant Seojin fired every working weapon they had. Railgun rounds tore into the mothership's hull. Plasma cannons burned through its organic armor. Missiles exploded across its surface. The Kruthak vessel was wounded, but it was still charging its weapon. 10 seconds to impact. The helmsman counted down. 987. The Kruthak cannon fired just as the ships collided. The blast hit the Indomitable's forward shields at point-blank range. The shields held for exactly 1 second before failing, but 1 second was enough. The Indomitable's reinforced prow smashed into the mothership's core. The impact threw everyone on the bridge forward against their restraints. Curie hit her head on the console in front of her. When her vision cleared, she saw that the view screen was showing the inside of the Kruthak ship. They had punched straight through it. "Reverse engines," Hyunwoo ordered. "Get us out of this thing." The Indomitable pulled free of the dying mothership. Behind them, the massive Kruthak vessel began breaking apart. Smaller swarm ships that had been coordinating with it suddenly seemed confused, like they had lost their connection to the hive mind. "All ships." Admiral Minho's voice came over the fleet channel. "Target the disorganized clusters. Hit them while they're confused." The human fleet pressed their advantage. But the battle was far from over. In another part of the battlefield, 3 human destroyers found themselves surrounded and cut off from the main fleet. A Talveen civilian transport that had failed to evacuate was with them, carrying 500 families. The destroyers could have abandoned the transport and fought their way back to the fleet. Instead, they formed a defensive triangle around it. For 14 hours, they held that position against overwhelming odds. The 3 ships took turns. When one needed to make repairs, the other 2 would cover it. They rotated positions, always keeping fresh shields between the Kruthak and the civilian transport. Ammunition ran low. Systems failed. Crew members fell at their stations from exhaustion. When Admiral Minho finally broke through with reinforcements, he found the 3 destroyers still holding position. One had only 17 crew members still conscious. But the civilian transport was completely unharmed. All 500 Talveen families had survived. 10 hours into the battle, things took a turn for the worse. A human cruiser called the Tenacious took critical damage to its main reactor. Chief Engineer Do-yoon had been transferred to that ship just before the battle to help with repairs. The reactor was failing. The ship was losing power. Without engines, the Tenacious was a sitting target. All hands abandoned ship. The Tenacious captain ordered, "Get to the escape pods. We have 5 minutes before reactor containment fails." The crew began evacuating, but Do-yoon stayed in the engine room. He opened a communication channel to Admiral Minho. "Admiral, I can keep the reactor stable for another 20 minutes. That's enough time to get the ship close to that cluster of swarm vessels. If I overload it at the right moment, the explosion will take out at least 30 enemy ships." "Negative, Chief. Get to an escape pod." "That's an order." "With respect, sir, you need me to do this. The automated systems can't handle a controlled overload. It has to be manual. Besides, we're losing this fight. We need every advantage we can get." There was a long pause. Then Minho said quietly, "Understood, Chief. Make it count." "Always do, sir. It's been an honor." The Tenacious used its remaining power to drift toward the largest concentration of Kruthak ships. The swarm vessels saw the damaged cruiser and converged on it like sharks sensing blood. They thought it would be an easy kill. Do-yoon waited until exactly the right moment. When the swarm ships were packed tightly around the Tenacious, he sent one final message. For Earth, for humanity, for our friends. Then he overloaded the reactor. The explosion was like a small sun being born. The blast destroyed 37 Kruthak ships instantly, but more importantly, The electromagnetic pulse from the exploding reactor disrupted swarm communications across the entire battle space. For 3 critical minutes, the Kruthak couldn't coordinate their attacks. The human fleet, with their hardened electronics, was barely affected. They fell on the confused swarm like wolves on scattered sheep. On the Indomitable's bridge, Curie watched the battle turn. A medical officer was bandaging her head where she had hit it during the ramming attack. She looked around at the human crew. Many of them were injured. Lieutenant Seojin had blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead, but her hands never stopped working the weapon's controls. "Lieutenant, you're hurt," Curie said. "Shouldn't you go to medical bay?" Seojin wiped the blood from her eye and kept firing. "I've had worse in sparring practice." "This is nothing." Curie realized something in that moment. To humans, this level of violence was normal. Not enjoyable, but normal. Their entire species had been shaped by a world that was constantly trying to kill them. Pain, injury, danger. These were just parts of life they had learned to work through. Slowly, the tide of battle shifted. The human fleet's discipline and firepower began to overwhelm the swarm's numbers. Kruthak ships started pulling back. At first it was just a few vessels, then dozens, then hundreds. "Admiral," a sensor operator reported, "the swarm is retreating." "What?" Minyo sounded shocked. "Are you sure?" "Confirmed, sir. The Kruthak are leaving the system. This has never happened before in recorded history. The swarm doesn't retreat, but they were retreating now. For the first time in thousands of years, the Kruthak swarm had met an enemy they couldn't defeat. An enemy that hurt them more than they could hurt it. An enemy that simply refused to give up. As the last Kruthak ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, the human fleet secured orbit around Halcyon. Rescue operations began immediately. Shuttles descended to the planet to evacuate the 3 million civilians from their underground shelters. The cost had been high. 11 human ships were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. 4,000 personnel were dead or wounded. But 3 million Talveen were alive because humans had answered their call for help. On the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo stood and addressed his exhausted crew. "Well done, everyone. I know you're tired. I know some of you are hurt. But you saved 3 million lives today. That's what we do. That's what humanity does. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." The crew didn't cheer. They were too tired for that. But they nodded. They understood. This was why they trained so hard. This was why they accepted the dangers of military service. So that when people like the Talveen needed help, someone would come. Curie stood and bowed deeply to the human crew. It was a gesture of profound respect in Talveen culture. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for not giving up on us when everyone else did." Hyunwoo smiled tiredly. "You're welcome. That's what friends do." Across the galaxy, every species with long-range sensors had watched the Battle of Halcyon. They had seen the impossible happen. They had watched 67 human ships hold against 300 Kruthak vessels and win. They had witnessed the swarm retreat for the first time in recorded history. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The humans were no longer just another species trying to find their place among the stars. They were warriors, protectors, Deathworlders who had brought their planet's fury to the cosmic stage. And the Kruthak swarm, for the first time in its ancient existence, had learned what it meant to be afraid. The celebrations on Halcyon lasted for 3 days. Chancellor Veltara personally visited every human ship in orbit. She thanked every crew member she could meet. She wept openly when she saw the memorial wall on the Indomitable, where the names of the 4,000 fallen were displayed. A Talvin elder, named Nari, began writing the official history of the battle. She called it The Day the Deathworlders Came. The title would become famous across the galaxy. But while the Talveen celebrated, the Galactic Coalition Council was in chaos. An emergency session was called. High Arbiter Quentis stood at his podium, his many arms moving in agitation. Around him, representatives from dozens of species argued loudly. "This is unacceptable," declared Ambassador Crix, a Vryn representative. "The humans took military action without coalition approval. They violated dozens of regulations. They acted like a rogue state. They saved 3 million lives," someone else pointed out. "That's not the point," Crix insisted. "The point is that they now have the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They defeated the Kruthak swarm, the swarm. No one defeats the swarm. What's to stop humans from using that power to conquer us? Perhaps the fact that they just spent 4,000 lives saving people who aren't even their species? A Luminar representative suggested quietly. But many species were afraid. They had refused to help the Talveen, and now they feared that humans would remember. They worried about what would happen if humanity decided to enforce their own version of justice on the galaxy. High Arbiter Quentis called for order. We must address the fact that humanity now represents a destabilizing force in galactic politics. I propose immediate restrictions on their military expansion and oversight of their defense forces. Ambassador Jiwan stood up. The entire chamber went quiet. Everyone wanted to hear what the human representative would say. "You're right to fear us," she said calmly. "We are dangerous. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We survived by becoming stronger, tougher, and more determined than anything that hunted us. We are absolutely dangerous." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Jiwan held up her hand for silence. "But there's something else you should know about Deathworlders. We remember who stood with us, and we remember who didn't. The Talveen asked for help. You all refused. We did not. That tells you everything you need to know about humanity. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in peace and help our friends when they need us. If that scares you, then maybe you should think about what kind of people you are." Counselor Binna, Earth's chief diplomat, joined Jiwan at the podium. She was an older woman with white hair and a kind face that hid a sharp mind. "The coalition had a chance to do the right thing," Binna said. "You chose bureaucracy over lives. You chose comfort over courage. Many species have watched this and learned a valuable lesson. They learned that the coalition's protection is worth exactly nothing when it really matters." Over the next few weeks, 17 species made a shocking announcement. They were leaving the Galactic Coalition to join a new organization with Earth and the Talveen Confederation. They called it the Mutual Defense Compact. These were mostly smaller, younger species who had always felt vulnerable. They saw what humanity had done for the Talveen and wanted that kind of protection for themselves. The coalition was furious, but there was nothing they could do. The law allowed any species to leave voluntarily. Meanwhile, Dr. Yunji continued studying the Kruthak swarm from her laboratory on Earth. She had samples of swarm tissue, recordings of their attack patterns, and data from the battle. What she discovered was deeply troubling. She called an emergency meeting with General Taijun, the head of Earth's military. Taijun was a tall man with gray hair and scars from old battles. He listened carefully as Yunji explained her findings. "General, the swarm didn't retreat from Halcyon because they were afraid. They retreated to analyze us. Look at these patterns." She showed him data on a screen. In the first hour of battle, the swarm lost ships quickly. But by hour 10, their losses had slowed. "They were learning our tactics. So they adapt," Taijun said. "We knew that. All living things adapt, yes, but there's more. We've detected massive swarm buildups in 3 sectors near Earth. They're not attacking random colonies anymore. They're concentrating their forces. And intelligence suggests they're all moving in one direction." "What direction?" Taijun asked, though he already knew the answer. "Toward Sol, toward Earth. General, they're planning to hit us with everything they have. The swarm has identified humanity as the primary threat. They're going to try to destroy us before we can help anyone else." Taijun looked at the data. The numbers were staggering. Over 2,000 Kruthak bioships all converging on the Sol system. It was the largest swarm offensive in recorded history. "How much time do we have?" he asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. They're gathering forces from multiple sectors. When they attack, it will be simultaneous from multiple directions. Taijun sat down heavily. 2,000 ships, even with humanity's superior technology and fighting spirit. Those numbers were overwhelming. He sent a message to the Galactic Coalition Council. It was simple and direct. "The Kruthak swarm is planning a massive assault on Earth. We have detected over 2,000 enemy vessels approaching our system. We are requesting coalition support." High Arbiter Quentis responded within hours. His message was equally simple. "The coalition will observe the situation with interest. We wish humanity the best of luck in their defense. In other words, no help was coming. The coalition was going to sit back and watch to see if the humans could survive. If humanity fell, they would negotiate with the swarm. If humanity won, they would claim they had faith all along." Curie was on Earth when she heard the news. She had been invited to visit the planet as a gesture of friendship between humans and Talveen. Walking under Earth's crushing gravity, Even with mechanical assistance, she finally understood why humans were so strong. This world was brutal. She watched human children playing in a park. They were running and jumping in gravity that would break a Talvine's bones. They were breathing air so rich in oxygen that it would burn Talvine lungs. They were laughing and playing, completely unaware of how deadly their environment was. Admiral Minho found her sitting on a bench watching the children. "It's different from your world, isn't it?" he said, sitting beside her. "Everything here is trying to kill you," Kiori said. "The gravity, the oxygen, the predators, the weather. How did your species even survive?" "We survived by refusing to give up," Minho said. "We survived by protecting each other. We survived by fighting back against everything that tried to destroy us. That's what made us strong enough to help you." "Your planet made you into warriors," Kiori said quietly. "You didn't choose this. You had to become this way to survive." "That's right," Minho agreed. "And now we use those gifts to protect others. That's the deal. We were made dangerous by our world, but we choose to use that danger to help people." "I heard about the swarm attack," Kiori said. 2,000 ships. That's too many. Even for humans," Minho nodded. "Maybe, but we're going to try anyway. That's what we do." "The Talvine are sending ships," Kiori said firmly. "I convinced Chancellor Veltara. We have 300 vessels. They're not warships, but we've armed them as best we can. We're coming to help." "You don't have to do that," Minho said gently. "Your people have already suffered enough. We won't ask you to fight our battle." "You came when we needed you," Kiori said. "You risked everything for us. Now it's our turn. That's what friends do, isn't it? That's what you taught us." Over the next few days, more ships arrived. The 16 other species in the Mutual Defense Compact sent what they could. The Luminar brought their advanced shield technology. The Nexil offered medical support. Smaller species donated supplies and resources. None of these species could have stood against the swarm alone. But together, they formed something new. They were building the alliance that the coalition should have been but never was. General Taejun stood in Earth's command center, looking at the tactical displays. The swarm was coming. In 2 weeks, maybe less, they would arrive in overwhelming force. But Earth had been preparing for threats since humans first reached the stars. They had built defenses throughout the Sol system. They had weapons platforms hidden in the asteroid belt. They had military bases on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. "They want to see how Deathworlders handle a real threat?" Taejun said to his staff. "Then let's show them. Let's show the entire galaxy what humans are capable of when we're defending our home." He opened a communication channel to every human military installation in the system. "All forces. This is General Taejun. The Kruthek swarm is coming for us with everything they have. They think they can break us. They think they can destroy humanity. They're wrong. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten Earth. We're going to teach them why you don't mess with a Deathworld species. Prepare for battle. Make our ancestors proud." Across the Sol system, humanity prepared for the largest battle in their history. Every ship was checked and rechecked. Every weapon was tested. Every soldier trained until they moved like machines. They came like a dark tide from the depths of space. 2,000 Kruthak bioships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. They arrived in waves from 3 different directions. It was a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm any defense. On Earth's orbital command station, Commander Jiho watched the sensors light up with enemy contacts. Jiho was young for his position, but he had earned it through years of training and combat experience. "Here they come," he said calmly. "All defense platforms, this is command. Weapons free. Show them what happens when they threaten our home." The swarm expected to sweep through the outer system quickly, as they had done to hundreds of other civilizations. Instead, they flew into a trap. Hidden among the ice and debris of the Kuiper Belt were thousands of automated defense platforms. Humanity had spent decades building them, preparing for the day when a threat would come to Earth. Now that day had arrived. The platforms opened fire simultaneously. Missiles launched from concealed tubes. Railguns fired from positions the swarm never detected. Laser batteries burned through the darkness. In the first hour, the Kruthak lost 200 ships to weapons they never saw coming. But the swarm kept coming. They adapted quickly, sending smaller organisms ahead to trigger the mines and expose the hidden platforms. They learned to dodge the railgun fire. They pushed forward, accepting losses because they had numbers on their side. The second line of defense waited at the gas giants. Military installations on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn launched waves of attack craft. Captain Sunmi commanded Mars Defense Station, a massive fortress built inside a hollowed asteroid. All ships form up on the station. Sunmi ordered, "Make them come through us to reach Earth." The swarm hit the second defensive line like a hammer. The battle around Jupiter lasted 6 hours. Human ships fought with desperate courage, but the numbers were overwhelming. Slowly, the swarm pushed through. Mars Defense Station held its position even as Kruthak ships swarmed around it. The station's massive cannons fired continuously, each shot destroying an enemy vessel. But there were always more. Always more. "Captain, we need to fall back," one of Sunmi's officers said. "We're going to be surrounded." "Negative," Sunmi replied. "Every minute we hold them here is another minute Earth has to prepare." "We hold this position." Mars Defense Station fought for 8 more hours before finally being overwhelmed. But in those 8 hours, it destroyed 400 Kruthak vessels. Captain Sunmi and her crew went down fighting, buying precious time for Earth. The swarm reached the third defensive line with 1,400 ships remaining. They found Earth's moon waiting for them. Commander Jiho's orbital defense network was the final barrier between the Kruthak and humanity's homeworld. Mass drivers, plasma cannons, railgun batteries, missile platforms. Every weapon humanity had ever invented was pointed at the approaching swarm. Near-Earth space became a killing field. The Talveen fleet arrived in the middle of the battle. 300 converted civilian vessels dropped out of FTL and immediately engaged the swarm. They were led by a volunteer coordinator named Minjae, a young Talveen who had been inspired by human courage, human forces. "This is the Talveen Relief Fleet," Minjae broadcast. "We're here to help. Tell us where you need us." The Talveen ships were no match for Kruthak bioships in direct combat, but they didn't need to be. They served as rescue vessels, pulling damaged human ships out of the battle zone. They provided supplies and ammunition to vessels that had exhausted their stores. They became support ships, multiplying the effectiveness of every human vessel. The other species from the Mutual Defense Compact arrived as well. The Luminar brought their advanced shield generators, which they shared with human ships. The Nexel set up mobile hospitals to treat the wounded. Every species contributed what they could. On Earth, Dr. Hajin worked frantically in a laboratory beneath the International Space Station. She was a physicist who had been developing something based on Dr. Yunji's research. If it worked, it could turn the tide of the battle. If it didn't work, Earth would fall. "General Taejun, this is Dr. Hajin," she called over the communication channel. "The electromagnetic pulse generator is ready. But I need to warn you, this is going to be massive. It will be powered by Earth's entire electrical grid. Every city on the planet will go dark." "Will it stop the swarm?" Taejun asked. "It will disrupt their communications for at least 3 minutes, maybe longer. But it's so powerful that it will also disable any coalition-built electronics. Our ships are designed to handle it, but any allied vessels with standard shielding will be affected." "Do it," Taejun ordered. "All human ships prepare for electromagnetic pulse. Allied vessels fall back to safe distance." The Kruthak swarm sensed victory. They were pushing through the final defenses. Earth was in sight. They sent their remaining forces in one massive assault. Dr. Hajin activated the pulse generator. For one instant, Earth's entire power grid channeled through the device. The electromagnetic pulse erupted from the International Space Station like an invisible explosion. It spread across the entire inner solar system in seconds. The swarm's bioelectric communication network shattered. For 3 minutes, every Kruthak organism was cut off from the hive mind. They became individual creatures, confused and directionless. They couldn't coordinate. They couldn't adapt. They were blind and deaf. The human fleet, with their triple redundant shielding and hardened electronics, was barely affected. Admiral Minno's voice rang out across the fleet channel. "All ships, attack now. Hit them while they're confused." The human fleet fell on the disorganized swarm like wolves on scattered prey. It was brutal and efficient. In 3 minutes, they destroyed over 300 enemy vessels. When the swarm's communications came back online, they had lost their numerical advantage. But they still had one final weapon. Their command organism, a massive bioship 3 kilometers long, pushed through the chaos toward Earth. If it could reach the planet, it could deploy organisms that would consume the entire biosphere. Captain Hyunwoo saw the command ship's trajectory. The Indomitable had been damaged in the fighting, but it could still move. He made a decision. Helm, intercept course. Put us between that thing and Earth. Sir, we don't have the firepower to stop it, Lieutenant Seojin said. Then we ram it. And we don't stop until it's dead or we are. The Indomitable accelerated toward the command ship. The two massive vessels collided above Earth's atmosphere, in a scene witnessed by billions of people below. For 17 minutes, the human crew fought a boarding action inside the Kruthak command organism. Captain Hyunwoo led the assault personally. He and his Marines fought through corridors of living flesh, battling swarm organisms in close combat. Finally, they reached the neural cluster, the brain of the command ship. For Halcyon, Hyunwoo shouted. For Doyun. For Earth! They destroyed the neural cluster with plasma charges. The command ship died, and with it, the coordination for the entire swarm assault. The remaining Kruthak vessels became mindless, easy targets for the human fleet, but Captain Hyunwoo never made it out. The dying command ship's death throes crushed the boarding team. They died as heroes, having saved their planet. The Battle of Sol lasted 14 days. When it was over, the Kruthak swarm was broken. Scattered remnants fled into deep space, never to threaten the galaxy again. Humanity had lost 23% of their fleet and 40,000 personnel. But Earth stood. 6 months later, Ambassador Ji-won stood before a transformed Galactic Coalition Council. 47 species had petitioned to join the Mutual Defense Compact. The coalition was scrambling to remain relevant. High Arbiter Quintus had been removed from power. The new council leadership was more humble, more willing to actually help their members instead of just talking about it. Ji-won, now promoted to High Ambassador, addressed the reformed council. You wanted to know what humanity represents. You wanted to know if we were dangerous. The answer is yes. We are Deathworlders. We are capable of violence that most species cannot imagine. We come from a planet that taught us to survive or die. But we are also capable of something else. We answer distress calls. We stand with our allies. We remember kindness. When the Talveen begged for rescue, we answered in force. When our allies needed us, they came to our aid. That is what humanity offers the galaxy. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want to rule you. We want to be your friends and your protectors. We are dangerous, yes. But we are dangerous for you, not to you. Remember that. Kiyuri sat in the audience next to Lieutenant Commander Seojin, who had been promoted after the battle. Seojin had a new scar on her face from the fighting, but she wore it proudly. Do you still think humans are reckless? Seojin asked quietly. Kiyuri thought about everything she had seen. The Battle of Halcyon, the Siege of Earth, the courage and sacrifice of people like Captain Hyunwoo and Chief Doyun. No, she finally said. You're terrifying. But I'm very glad you're on our side. On Earth's moon, a massive memorial was built. It listed the names of all who had died defending Sol. 40,000 names were carved into the stone. The monument was visible from Earth, a reminder to all humanity of the price of freedom. The inscription was simple, suggested by General Taejun and approved by unanimous vote. It read, "They stood,